Recording. Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight, and today Jordan Foltz is back. Very happy to see him, that he is alive and well. His YouTube channel is Puppy Aesthesia. We had a conversation a couple of months ago. If you haven't seen it, I highly suggest you do that. I will put the link below. So Jordan, welcome back.
Thanks, it's good to talk to you.
Yeah, what a year.
What an era, right? Yeah, what a time period, whatever this is about. It's a challenge to have gratitude. Sometimes I hear people say, wow, we're living in some of the most amazing times, so much is happening. It's, and that's a great perspective to have. And I struggle to have it, It's easy for me to be very negative.
Yeah, you can be on an emotional roller coaster. One day you have the feeling, oh, we could create paradise here. And the next day you read something or something hits your ear and you think, oh my goodness, this madness, is it really true?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, but we are here, and I guess we are here to stand up and speak truth to power. So let's talk a little bit about the US election. There are a lot of bizarre events around that.
Yeah.
And I have to say, why so clumsy?
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be the USA. This is not Ouagadougou.
Totally. Yeah, well, it is now.
Yeah, but it certainly has the feeling of a banana republic.
Yes, and that's a sad thing, And I kind of vacillate back and forth between subscribing to the narrative that the United States is kind of a beacon of justice and democracy for the world, and then vacillating to the other side of like, no, it's not, it's never been, there's really nothing special about it. But I tend toward the former. I tend toward really, a pretty strong pretty strong conviction that the U.S. Constitution is a special thing, and that it was kind of an iconoclastic political revolution, and that at least the document and the idea of individual freedom and kind of a federal republic is a pretty revolutionary thing, and that whether or not we're embodying it on any kind of a genuine level in this day and age, that the idea at least is a beautiful thing that does bring justice and virtue, to ourselves and the world. But yeah, I mean, I got to say, I wasn't really surprised at how things went or how they are going with the election. By my observation, and I know that this is not what everybody would observe, even everybody who's say paying attention, or everybody who's like an out of the box thinker would observe. But by my observation, I've seen, since Trump was elected, I've come to see him as an outsider and a threat to the establishment. And I really don't know that. I could be getting that totally wrong. There could be, I've heard people say it's controlled opposition, or ultimately Trump is leading, the world and the United States in essentially the same direction as Biden or Clinton would.
I think so too. It will have a different flavor, because he would like to have a bigger chunk for the USA in the new world order. The same goes for Putin, the same goes for Xi.
Yeah.
But that he is actually fighting the new world order, no. It will have a different flavor, and I will give him that. He didn't start another big war. Yeah, I will give him that. But other than that, his closeness, for instance, with certain people like Jeffrey Epstein, or the entire thing with Bayrock, who financed a lot of his projects. Very shady people, and at the very least, what you can say is that he does not care what type of people he is surrounding him with, and especially where their money is coming from. Because this Bayrock group was involved in a human trafficking scandal as well. I made a video about it a while ago. And so, no, I do not see him as any type of savior.
Yeah. So I definitely, you know, put myself on guard against the savior thing, especially when it comes to political figures. It's an anomaly, though. It really is. To me, I mean, I haven't looked into Bayrock. I have looked into it a little bit, but not to the extent that you have. I do know about the Epstein connection. However, my sense is that he refrained from going to that island, you know, or getting on the plane or interacting in that way. And my sense is that, you know, to play the devil's advocate, or just to play the advocate of Trump, I guess, which I have been doing. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
it will come back.
Yeah. I guess if I were to revert it to a policy level, there's certain things that at least temporarily pretty averse to a new world order type movement. One being resisting globalist trade agreements. One being pretty strong champion for the Bill of Rights, for Second Amendment. And to me, I don't know that, I mean, it would seem to me that the New World Order would certainly mandate that people be disarmed. And, you know, I've seen that happening in New Zealand and Australia and other countries that have had, you know, pretty strong, let's say, gun rights, you know, kind of ethos, have been slowly broken down, but he hasn't moved in that direction. So, you know, and then, yeah, again, resisting the trade agreements. But I find it's amazing to me, the level of, if it was a psyop, let's say, if it was like a controlled opposition psyop, it's expertly done. Because for me, when I see the entire media establishment desperately trying to get rid of this man, it's just suspect to me. Could that possibly entirely be an illusion? Like a concerted effort among academia, the entire media establishment, the entire political establishment, US intelligence agencies, clearly taking an antagonistic stance to this guy. That's what gets me thinking. That's the main thing that gets me thinking, is like, is that just theatrics? Is that just theatrics to play into, say, right-wingers' suspicion of those institutions so that they support him stronger? Or there's the alternate kind of view that he would be representative of a different kind of cabal, you know, a cabal that perhaps was not in power, a cabal that might be competitive with, say, a Clinton-Bush cabal, that it truly was an upset election, but it's still a certain type of person in power, but it was just it was a competitive election with who wanted to be in power. I don't really know, but anyway, I do work on controlling any kind of you know, messianic type situation or pedestalizing the man. But I have found it a very interesting situation, and I find it hard to believe that if there were a group of people, let's say the deep state, let's say, you know, just powerful global institutions that did expect to have control of the continuum of US politics, that was an unexpected event. 2016, I find it really hard to believe that it wasn't an unexpected event to the powers that be, based on the reaction, based on the intelligence letter that came out on January 17th, right before the inauguration, trying to delegitimize the presidency, based on Hillary Clinton constantly touring thereafter, saying she won it and he was illegitimate based on the Russia investigation, based on the impeachment, based on just the constant onslaught, based on the smearing of anybody who's on Trump's side as this, in the same way that they do these people who are uprising in Italy. Really no rhetorical or dogmatic or policy based reason that association could be made. It seems so desperate to me, in the same way that people get villainized for standing up against COVID authoritarianism. It's a similar way that Trump supporters have been villainized, and that's what's gotten my attention. My attention of like, what is all this? What is all this animus, and where's it coming from? And if he was part of it, why would that be merited, or just where's it coming from? You know what I'm saying?
There are feuds among those all the time.
Yes.
The only thing that they are really, where they have the same goal is to oppress us. But who is going to be the chief determiner of the narrative? There are constantly feuds going on. And I have to say, what the media is doing, I really do not care so much about that. But what I do care about is what he's doing. And when I look at that, praising 5G and 6G, and now the militarization of this entire thing. Oh yeah, we will bring the military in to distribute the COVID vaccine, and giving money and the warp speed. That entire agenda, then leaving the WHO but teaming up with Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, this brainchild of Bill Gates.
Right. Yep.
So I'm sorry, that does not convince me.
Right. So every breaking of an establishment type thing seems to be getting in, like stepping into bed with another one that's as bad or potentially worse, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So the curiosity to me, so the election's a strange situation. So would you say that the irregularities that seem to favor Biden, infighting amongst two tribes that have pretty similar ends, kind of a thing?
I have the impression the self-appointed elite is overconfident right now. It has, to me, the feeling of we are just going to rig the election and we rub it into your face and there's nothing that you would do about it. It feels like that because these problems, dead people voting, cartons of votes disappearing, and all that has been known for years. These machines that always flip to a different candidate.
Yes.
All of that, none of this is new, but nothing ever happens. And this year, I think they took it over the top. That is my impression. Because otherwise, if that is not the attitude, then I have to say you did it in a very clumsy way.
Exactly. It's all very confusing. It would be incredibly. Yeah, I'm kind of like paralyzed, honestly, right now, Judith, about my conclusions about how the powers that be are structured and what the intent of all of this is. Again, going back to what would be most obvious to me, I kind of just touched on that. Like, what seemed obvious to me in 2016, and I will say I didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2016. I was pretty much on the same bandwagon that I was told to be on, of this man's a dangerous, you know, bigoted imbecile. I voted third party, which I often do. But at that time, when the entire deep state and media establishment took an opposing standpoint to him, I did what was most obvious to me at that time was this man's a threat to the establishment. Therefore, I'm going to pay attention and probably be in his corner if I'm going to be in anybody's corner for now. And now, again, because of the things that you're saying, because of the complexities of the situation, it's not quite that easy to be in anybody's corner as far as a leader, you know, someone who's involved in the political establishment. But yeah, again, the irregularities are obvious. The media won't report on them. They won't even acknowledge that they exist, but they're obvious to anybody who pays attention. And so, is that an intentional thing? Was it allowed to be so obvious to rile, let's call the right or conservatives up, that it was done unfairly and to institute civil unrest, you know, or to turn people against each other, because one side's clearly going to be convinced that it's a BS election and the other side's going to be convinced that Joe Biden won or whatever. Why was it done so obviously? Did they get overconfident, or was it done purposefully? Or was it just the scale of it? When you bring in the level of mail-in voting, which this is the first year that was done, it blew the scale of it so out of proportion that it was impossible to ignore it. You know, it wasn't a matter of like 0.3 percentage points that the fraud or that the manipulation was causing. Like now we're talking about 3 and 4 and 5, you know, percentage points, you know, because of the mail-in votes that were manipulated. So maybe it was just a matter of overconfidence. Maybe it's all deliberate. I find it hard to, you know, I hear a lot of people and I listen to a lot of people on the YouTube, and I haven't been the most educated or let's say well-versed conspiracy theorist. That's really not my wheelhouse. I know that stuff's going on, but as far as the details thereof and the particular institutions and particular individuals involved in this, that, and the other, it's not something that I've really cultivated kind of like or codified in my mind. But, you know, listening to different conspiracy theorists, I mean, including folks on your channel, there's this kind of, there's a continuum of what a particular thinker, or let's call him conspiracy theorist, how much control they believe, let's say, the dark cabals have over society, over people's minds, and over people's psyches. And on the one extreme is that it's everything, and that it's all BS, and you can't believe anything, and there's no way that you'd ever even be able to conceive of truth or recognize patterns or follow your own observations, because that's all just part of the plan to lead you down a certain path. And then on the other extreme is that they've got no control. It's all just incidental, you know, capitalism or something like that. And I think I'm somewhere in between. You know, like, so when it comes to the US election, you know, one extreme would be the optics were planned to create civil unrest. They just wanted it to look like they wanted the heist to be obvious so that people would be angry about it. And they're in control of everything, you know.
I would just briefly stop the recording because your image has been frozen for a couple of minutes, and try to get this started again, yeah? Okay, you know, I have to say I don't believe in government at all. I don't believe in voting in elections. The way I look at it, all elections are rigged. Anywhere, it doesn't matter which country. And here in Germany, you can see how they are doing it, but they do it a little bit more elegantly, I have to say. Yeah. So Joe Sixpack will probably not notice that. So, and to me, Government is like organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I will not dignify that with a vote for the
Gotcha.
next head honcho of that crime organization.
Yep.
And I know there are millions and millions of people who think completely differently. But that's okay with me, that I'm just letting you know where I stand on this. So I never have really a dog in that race. Yeah, who
Yeah.
will be the next clown in the White House or in the Bundestag or wherever.
Yes.
Because I have observed it for a couple of decades now. And I have seen people voting this way, that way, and a new party and a new way. Oh my goodness, here little Germany has so many parties. I can't even, I'm not even up to date. I
Yeah.
cannot even tell you from the top of my head how many parties we have. But, you know, nothing ever really changes
Mm-hmm.
because here we are, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at the brink of a total global dictatorship.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I gave that up a long time ago, thinking that by exchanging the matrix agent,
Yes.
something would change on a meaningful level. It's still the matrix.
So did it, so let me just clarify your belief. So would you go so far as to say no political candidate is ever elected that isn't expected or planned to be by those who are currently in power?
I don't know that. I would say on the lower levels, I'm not saying that they are all bad and that everybody has bad intentions. I think the higher you go, you have so many people along the way that you owe something to, that helped you to get there, that
Right.
you are no longer free in your decisions.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And so then you were also saying by um, by choosing not to participate in the say the farce of voting or choosing destiny through political interaction, you're entering yourself into a different matrix. Is that what you were saying?
Um, no, I don't want to have a different matrix.
You don't want a matrix at all.
Exactly.
And
Because
have you found?
it's not only the political system, then you have the criminal banking system, then you have the media, you have religion, then further down the road, here comes your own personal shadow, things that you have never really dealt with and addressed. And you keep piercing and piercing and piercing, and at the end of the day, you end up in the middle with a demiurge that is an AI. So why would I support that system?
I understand. So I mean, have you found that to be a successful path as far as are you, I mean, we're at, let's say if you were at one time psychologically, emotionally invested in political participation and now you're not, have you noticed your life getting richer? Have you found more freedom in your life?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was never really that invested.
Mm-hmm.
It's that set in pretty early that I had the impression everything is wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
I already had that when I was a little child, but yeah, but letting that go for good, saying, you know what, look at it. For decades and decades, people have tried it this way and that way, and no, I will never vote for you again. I will vote for the other guy now. Yeah, but
Right.
as I said, here we are.
Yes. Well, I find that beautiful and helpful for me, you know, because as I said, I've often followed as far as politics go, I've often followed a path that's like to one extent inconsequential, because I don't usually vote for people who are gonna win. You know, I'll vote for like somebody who's speaking truth to power, as you put it. But they're a third party candidate, and they're not going to win. But I do find congruency with what they propose, politically speaking. And only recently have I gotten or allowed myself to become invested in something, and it's less so now than I think it was over the last couple of years. But it's more taking a stand, a social and spiritual stand, but a political one too. But I think you're correct that it's probably participating in the illusion that that maybe it is a complete illusion that I have subscribed to, that the left is more hell bent on taking people's liberty away quicker. But it's a successful illusion. Again, going back to the COVID thing. I mean, those are the folks in this country who are shutting things down, taking people's jobs away, putting people in jail, chanting people down in the middle of the store for not wearing a mask. Guaranteed, it's a Democrat every time. And so, is there substance to that? Should I pay attention to that, or should it just be an incidental criteria that doesn't sink in? And I think that there's power to letting it be an incidental criteria rather than letting it fall into a categorization of, well, if these guys are acting like this, then I'm going to hang in this camp. I'm going to hang in the conservative camp. I'm going to trust those people more, just by default, which is where I've gone. It's absolutely where I've gone. So there might have been some overcorrection there, possibly.
I will try to get you back. You're frozen again. So we are back. We had other strange things happening apart from. Oh, did you see that video where this guy was shredding a Trump vote? Did you see that?
This guy was?
Yeah, he filmed himself. He was in charge of counting mailing votes. Yeah.
At one of the counting facilities?
Yeah. So, and he filmed himself, not the smartest idea, I guess. And then he said, yeah, and then we open it, and then and then he showed it to the camera and said, and if it's something like here where it says Donald J. Trump, and then threw it behind him, and then he said something along the lines of, that somehow doesn't make it. and I'm not saying this is not happening on both sides. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that there have been also people who threw away Biden votes.
There would have to be people who have done that, I will say that there's a certain, what I've noticed is that the types of people who are attracted to administrative bureaucratic positions tend to be people who lack creativity and tend to be people who like to ingratiate state power. And, that's where, in Washington, D.C., I think it's like upwards of 90% of the people there who vote Democrat. It's an extremely high proportion. They're all bureaucrats. What do you expect? So anyway, yeah, but obviously you get people on the right who would be so inflamed by a Biden vote or a Bernie Sanders vote or whatever, who would likely do the same thing. But I do think institutions of administrative fiat power attract less creative people and people who are happy to ingratiate that power further. It's just it's an obvious thing, that one would expect. And I think that's why you get an administrative or a deep state that tends to favor the big government party, the bigger government party,
And but there are, other countries, of course, are reacting to this. Yes, our Mrs. Merkel and Macron, they congratulated already Biden. No surprises here. Both are globalists par excellence. So the ones that are quiet is Putin and Xi. They do not say anything as of now. And then something strange happened. I find it strange because it's happening now. The UK government is to retake control of its atomic weapons management from industry. Because since 1999, that has been managed by Lockheed Martin-led consortium, which includes Jacobs Engineering and Serco. That deal has been expected to run until 2025. So I ask myself, why now?
The government is taking back manufacturing from Lockheed Martin and
the
Jacobs.
oversight.
What's that?
The oversight, they nationalized it.
It's still going to be developed by Jacobs and Lockheed Martin, but they're...
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
No.
They nationalized the nuclear program.
Yeah. You know what? The article is from 2nd of November. And I find the timing interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. And my thoughts were along the lines of, are they expecting that the United States will become so unstable that we rather would not like to have them messing with our nukes? Might that be a line of thought?
I think that's a very likely line of thought. Again, I mean, if one were to try to deduce what any intention in all of this is, there's two things that you could deduce. One, that, again, going back to what I was saying in the beginning, one, Trump's an insurgent and the establishment wants Biden, or two, the establishment wants a fight. The establishment wants instability. The establishment wants to pit the people against each other so that more authoritarianism there can be an excuse for more authoritarianism. And that second, theory would fall more in line with the anticipation you're talking about, from the UK government. It's curious. I mean, they're private corporations. I don't know how much purview the U.S. government has over what they're developing. I'm sure it would be a considerable amount. I mean, I'm sure they've got strong ties to the U.S. deep state, but I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, this election fraud, as I said, is very blatant. And I'm not the only one who is seeing that. So I'm pretty sure that videos that I just described and events of the machines not working and so on and so forth. Honestly, not only is it a little bit ridiculous, as I said, it has the taste of a banana republic, but it's, for other countries, they might think, my goodness, nothing is working there. The corruption is on all levels. Yeah, from the guy that is counting to Biden itself and to Trump itself, the entire system is so broken. So maybe we take charge of our nukes.
Yeah. I wonder who would have been making that decision in England. If it was if it was an agency decision or a legislative decision or an executive decision or what. But I don't know. I mean, you tell me. You live in Germany. What's the general consensus about U.S. Integrity when it comes to the democratic process? Is it usually considered a farce more than other countries, or about on par with any other Western industrialized, globalized country?
You mean how the Germans view the U.S.?
The political process here in particular, yeah, like the election process, like before this one.
The majority, they usually go along with whatever is, you know, presented in the mainstream media. I have to say, I saw that when Obama was still running for president, and he had this huge gathering at the Victory Column in Berlin. My goodness, they showed up by the tens of thousands. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
But I have to say, right now, Germans are more, you know, at least the ones who are a little bit more aware, they are very, very busy with resisting the corona nonsense. Yeah. Yes, I think they are aware of what is going on there in the USA, but it is not their primary
Sure.
focus.
So if you had 2 million people show up for a protest in Berlin, and how many people in Germany? Like 60 million, 50 million?
80 million.
80 million. So that's 1/40th. That's pretty good. 1/40th of the population showed up for a protest. I mean, I would imagine close to a fourth or a third of the people are pretty skeptical about the whole thing.
Yeah, and they are getting more and more and more and more.
That's great. That's exciting. I did see that that protest, the first one. I guess it was in August, right? The 1.3 million anti-mask protests, and I was talking about it, and I was making posts about it, and it was sad actually. I was making posts about that and congratulating these people and the Germans for taking a stand. And somebody close to me, ended up sending me an email that was intended for somebody else, but they put my email in the address bar and sent me an email basically completely throwing me under the bus and making fun of the fact that I would celebrate something like this. And it was really sad. It was actually a pretty huge fissure in a close relationship in my life. And the point was, Jordan's anti-mask, see how crazy and silly he is. Roll your eyes. I can't believe he would promote a protest against masks. And keep in mind, these were like boomers who probably were protesting the Vietnam War back in, you know, the 70s. And now they're making fun of, you know, people who are pro or anti-war and anti-authoritarianism and pro individual rights and pro liberty. The whole thing's been flipped, and it was a scapegoat situation. And what was scary to me and what was sad was that I had this realization that if I were ever prosecuted, I'll say persecuted, for not wearing a mask, if I was ever fined and then had to appear in court, I don't know how far it would go here. Nobody's ever bothered me about it, authorities, that is. Then these same people who are supposed to be my friends and family would be going, tisk, 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 bad. They wouldn't be saying, you know, government, you know, like, back off government, he's our man. They'd be saying, tisk, 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 Jordan, you should have listened to the state. You should have obeyed the rules. You should have worn the mask. And that's what was so scary to me, was like getting this kind of projected future vision of how things would go if it ever came down to me getting prosecuted for one of these things, and how remote the support would actually be among the people who I know and love for me. It's like, I mean, and that's what's happened. You know, that's what's happened throughout time when authoritarian regimes have taken over. Families turn their backs on each other.
And just to give you an idea, I have a lot of people who are very prominent in this movement. They have been fired, suspended, their bank accounts have been closed. So we are already there. Yeah.
Bank accounts closed too, huh?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Can they get a bank account, or is it specific institutions, or are they pretty much shut out from bank accounts?
No specific institutions, but still.
Unbelievable. It's like, why even bother talking about the CCP in China? You know,
Yeah.
it's like I spend time talking about Google's collaboration with China over the social credit system for this exact same stuff. It's like there's no reason in even pointing the finger anymore
Yeah.
over there, right? I mean, if that's what's happening here.
Yeah. And you know who Klaus Schwab is?
Well, you mentioned him a couple of times.
Klaus Schwab, he wrote this book, The Great Reset. He wrote
Oh,
it with
okay. You did
Thierry
mention him.
Mallard. I have a Kindle version of it because
Okay.
sometimes I like to hear it from the horse's mouth
Yes.
itself.
World Economic Forum. Is he
Mhm.
like the chair of that or something?
Exactly. And he advised Boris Johnson in the UK
Yes.
to jail all the corona protesters and those who do not want to take the vaccine. So we are there. My goodness, people, what are you waiting for?
So when did he write that? What is
Oh,
it?
it
Is it
was just today or yesterday it was in the news.
okay? The Great Reset. Is it? Was it an
Oh no,
op-ed?
that came out this year.
Was it a published book or
Yes,
some
a
kind of?
published book. And
Okay.
I guarantee you that because I know that it takes time to write a book, and it came out in spring, during springtime this year. So, which means they already had it.
Totally. Well, I've been hearing a lot about this Great Reset, and more. And I didn't actually realize there was an entire book written about it. But
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
And sometimes I visit the website of the World Economic Forum and I look at their videos, have a look at it. I published one on my channel where the headline is You will own nothing and you will be happy.
really.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Everything that you need, you will rent it and you will no longer own anything.
What?
So, and but I did it just yesterday and had a look at what their projection is in terms
Mhm.
of job development. And they were talking about job development up to 2025. What is interesting, are these people in 2025 who are still wearing the mask in their videos?
Not a
And
surprise at all.
yeah, and as you said, Biden, his so-called science advisor, called for a national lockdown. So it will no longer be the decision of the governor. Yeah, lock down the United States for 4 to 6 weeks and knock out the small businesses for good. That is how I
Of course.
see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the small business people go back and vote for these people. I don't. Anyway, we moved beyond that conversation, but it blows my mind that you can have an individual who literally had the government come in, and I know they're out there. You know, election integrity aside, I see what signs are in people's yards. I see what signs are on people's cars, and to have the government come in and mandatorily shut your business down that you put your life work and investment and effort and dreams and inspiration into, and then to turn around and vote for that person again is beyond me. It truly is beyond me. It shows a level of superstitious, I call it statolatry. It's a
Yeah.
level of statolatry that's truly baffling, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like you just accept this person as the godhead and you
Mm-hmm.
shrug it off. You're like, well, they're the godhead. They're protecting me. I don't care that they just stole everything from me with no compensation, no remuneration, and they're not. And that Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of these, Uber and all these huge corporations obviously are going to reap the benefits from the small businesses getting crushed.
Yeah. Mr.
It's very
Bezos has
discouraging.
doubled his wealth. He is
Pardon me?
200 billion, his net worth.
Who's that? Bill?
Bezos, the
Oh,
owner of
Bezos.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how much that's changed over the last year.
Yeah, since the corona virus. He has doubled his net worth.
God, it's criminal.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter gets highlights magazines. We've got some, small children, some toddlers, and she gets highlights magazines, and it's like little cartoons and activities and stories that you read and stuff like that. And they've started going back into the photographs of the children going through their day-to-day to demonstrate life in the highlights magazines, and drawn little masks in on the children.
Mm. Mm.
Photoshopped them in as part of the propagandizing and the normalization of kids. So the kids you see in your own kid magazine out in the park aren't playing naturally. They're masked.
Yeah, Homo hygienicus.
Yes. Yeah.
Social engineering Homo hygienicus. And I've read in a New York Times article where it says Biden masks as cultural norms.
Yes.
So meaning, if that becomes cultural norm, it will never go away. You can rest that it will never happen that it goes away.
Exactly.
Because that is exactly what cultural norm means.
Yep. So that it then feels weird not to wear one.
Yeah, we will muzzle you forever. But there is a lot also going on here. And there will be a class action lawsuit against Drosten, the WHO, certain players in the WHO, and other politicians, so on and so forth. It will take place in the USA, but because here in Europe you cannot do a class action lawsuit. And but it is a German lawyer who is also accredited in California, and he is working together. He announced it recently that some of the law firms are working together with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That are picking this up. And I have listened to, I guess, almost all their information gathering. They have they founded this Corona inquiry, and they listen to doctors, entrepreneurs, media scientists, and so on and so forth. And so that will take place as well, because these masks are dangerous. And we already had a dead child in the school. And the funny thing was, the media said, yeah, well, the reason why the child died, that nobody knows, but it was not the mask.
Yeah, right. We don't know anything except for it's not the mask, right? Yeah. We know the one thing we don't want you to think.
Yeah, because it's perfectly normal that 9-year-olds they just drop dead. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So some combination. I mean, it could be a combination of chemicals within the mask, or just excessive carbon monoxide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poisoning, depending on how confining the mask is. Breathing your own breath back in.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is also in preparation. And the interesting thing is that Mr. Drosten, do you know who Christian Drosten is?
No.
Mm-hmm. Christian Drosten, he is working here for Robert Koch Institute. That would be your CDC. And he's the one who basically convinced the WHO to declare the pandemic. And now it turns out that he might not even have a PhD.
Nice.
And people are digging and digging, and they are working on that full steam. There are so many things that do not add up yeah, with his PhD. Plus, he has this long time acquaintances for 17 years. And he was the one who manufactured those PCR tests that actually do not tell you if you are infected or not. So he was the one who indirectly declared the pandemic, and the friend, yeah, he.
And he's from Germany's health division.
Yeah, yeah.
Was he the liaison to the WHO or something for Germany, or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are exciting things, you know, that you're talking about. I'm curious, you know, I'm curious how much hope you have for dissolving something like this.
I have to say that is depending on what kind of what kind of day I'm having. It is not, you know, I do not have a lot of mood swings in general. So,
Yeah.
but I have days where I think, oh my goodness, how are we going to get out of this madness? And then I have days where I have a strong feeling where I say, oh, we are going to win this, and we are going to win this big. Ultimately, I would say yes. I think their evil plan will fail. You know, we have the saying here in Germany, arrogance comes before the fall.
Yes.
And I see the elites exactly at that point. Everything is now so in your face, so arrogant. And that is, plus it is mixed sometimes with despair, because also they notice that people are waking up to the nonsense. Otherwise, Mr. Schwab would not recommend to jail the corona protesters and those who do not want to have the vaccine, meaning this combination of total arrogance and desperation, I think that is, because when you get desperate, you start making mistakes.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that is what ultimately will break their neck.
You know, that's interesting. Yeah, and the infighting too. I think there likely is to be infighting. Like going back to our original note here, you know, there could be a collective plan at some point, but if people's own personal hunger for power gets in the way and they start competing amongst themselves, then things start to trip up and get weird. And going back to the whole Trump phenomenon, that might be part of what's been going on there, you know. That he would be an elite enough to be in on the plan, but personally interested in his own in his own empowerment on a different track enough to thwart some certain collective agreements, you know, let's say. Now, in France, I think they already have to carry a health card to even be in public. Is that right?
Not that I haven't heard of. But I'm not saying this cannot be. I mean, Macron is pretty crazy as well. Yeah. And yeah, I have to say, for me, I'm just focusing really here on Germany, because there is a lot of stuff happening and going down here. And then I keep an eye on the USA. And sometimes, yeah, okay, Kenya, because I love Kenya. I spend so much time there, and yeah, once in a while, Asian countries and so on. But I cannot focus on all the countries.
Right.
And, France is not the one that is really on my radar right now. Okay. And yeah, I observe what is going on in the USA, because I have to say I'm a bit worried. Some people say that no matter who will be declared the winner at the end of the day, that there will be riots, there will be unrest. And you don't think so?
I haven't seen evidence of it yet. Well, let's put it this way. I think that Biden's already essentially been declared as far as the masses go. Like if you're just kind of an ignorant mainstream media follower, as far as you know, I mean, you can't even watch a political video about US politics on YouTube without them saying the AP's called the election for Biden. The AP, like every video you go to that even talks about the election,
Yeah,
they're
but since
flagging
when
it.
does the press call who is the president? Since when?
Yes, I know that. I know that. But, you know, if you go and ask on the street, if I were to go out into my town and start asking people on the street, who's the president elect? I'll bet you 1 out of 20 would say it's not determined yet. You know, most people are going to say Biden. So we've already seen, so I'm talking on a zeitgeist level rather than a legal one. On a zeitgeist level, we've already seen what would happen if Biden would win. And there's been some protests and looting, but they were put down. And it was from the far left pretty much. I don't think if he were to actually get declared, then it would be much different than that. I think probably it would only happen if Trump won it. But I could be wrong. I don't think that a group of, let's say, far-right militia members are going to take to the streets if Biden is declared the winner. I think it's possible that they would if there was a national shutdown mandated. Like when that happened, like when things started happening, I think you'd see some of that potentially. I hope so, to tell you the truth. But for just being declared the winner, I don't think you would see that level of chaos from Trump supporters, let's say.
I hope so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I as I said before we started recording, I find it frustrating that the USA cannot bundle their energy and stand up to the corona madness.
It's amazing where the lines fall. It saddens me too. Here's the thing, Judith, is that there's a large contingent of people in the Western world, the US included. I'm saying the Western world. I haven't really traveled much in the Western world in the last 10 years, so I don't know. But I'll just say in the US, a large contingent of people who don't value liberty anymore. You know, I went on Freeman's show, right, a couple months ago, and we were talking about liberty and freedom. And Freeman was saying 90% of the American people would never take a mandatory vaccine. We're too freedom-minded. We're too independent-minded. And I was just kind of shaking my head. I was like, no, dude, you overestimate. I wish that was the case, but that might have been the case 100 years ago or 150 years ago. But very, very often, people are statologers. They're statologers. They derive their moral compass from what the government says and what the media says, literally. And it's very sad. And when such a large portion of the population gets to that place, there's no standing up to any of it unless they're told to stand up to it. You know, it just doesn't happen. If it's made to be the fashionable, like I said before, if it's made to be the fashionable, intellectual, prestigious thing, if Hollywood's selling it to you and you're getting Hollywood stars and TV stars and Taylor Swift and all these people virtue signaling all day long to wear a mask and this is dangerous and do this and Biden and blah, 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 then folks who don't have a moral compass that stands outside of those silos of disinformation and propaganda, they go that route. And it's 50% at least of the people in the US. And that it's sad. And I think a lot of it is along class lines. I think it's an elitist versus a working class thing. You get a lot more freedom-minded people among the working class who won't wear a mask. It's more common that I'll like see a plumber, you know, at the store, or like somebody with a blue collar mechanic's shirt on who just doesn't give a shit what people think about him or her, who they're not the prestigious, you know, strata of society in the first place. So why would they care whether or not they're trying to achieve prestige and approval with this particular thing? They're more immune from that and more given to following their own paths. And then people who are religious, religious people, they've got God. They believe they derive their morality from God, and so they're also much more equipped to resist, in my opinion, this kind of a thing, because they say, you don't tell me what's good and bad. You can't do this to my body. I'm a child of God. And I think at this point in this country, it's around 60%. 60% of the people are believe in God. I think have a relationship with God to some extent, have some religious affiliation. I could be wrong. It could be 60% Christian, but Pew Research has a study on it. It's getting lower and lower and lower, obviously. And with that place is occupied by the state, that very often, not all the time. So, I mean, the people in Germany who are coming together, are you finding that it's people from all different walks, all different
it's
all
the middle
different
of
spiritual systems?
society.
What's that?
It's the middle of society.
It's the middle.
Yeah, it's we have all kinds of nationalities that live here, that are standing up with us. We have Black people, Jewish people, yeah. And the funny thing is, they always say that anti-Semites, the protesters are anti-Semites. There are so many Jewish people in that movement, yeah, but nobody is talking about that.
Well, everybody knows if you don't want to wear a mask, then you're definitely an anti-Semite. I mean, it's a logical deduction, right? I mean,
yeah.
Where they come up with this stuff is ridiculous.
And when the first big one happened, the media said 17,000 demonstrated.
That's pathetic. I can't believe they would do that.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. But
that, you know, that even that is a home run for the movement, because some people, they started saying, why are they lying to me?
Exactly.
Because they have seen aerial views, videos. Yeah. And then they started digging. And the next big one, the one with the 2 million, they were there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, those kind of incongruities are nice, you know, to shake people loose from the trance of what the media tells them is true is so important, you know. And I've heard you talk before. We talked about it a little bit in our other interview about this whole QAnon thing, right? And it's like, even if that is a misguided path, you can't follow that path and be a media sycophant at the same time. So I think that it's like, even if that's we're a stepping stone toward weaning people off the trance of the media establishment, then it's a worthwhile stepping stone. Let's just put it that way, you know?
But that will end in nothing as well, you know?
It might not, though. It might not, because if they were able to shake, the QAnon might end in nothing, but the fact that they've released themselves from a media trance, from following media dictated truth, because you can't have both. If you're into QAnon, you're not, I guarantee you're not watching the mainstream media, and you've forsaken it. You've turned your back on it forever. So whatever happens with QAnon, it doesn't really matter. Eventually it'll peter out and end, and they will be released from that trance and hopefully find other ways to invest their exploration of truth, you know?
Or they go back into that trance.
Or they could back into the media trance. Yeah, they could.
Yeah, because it is so disappointing that you invested all your hopes and emotions into that, and then nothing came to fruition.
That's a good point. That could happen as well. But again, just like, when there's a huge incongruity and a huge lie that the media takes, and people wake up to it, it's a beautiful thing. And I do think that in some ways the election here that we're dealing with might have some results like that, because it's hard not to know that something's fishy. It's hard not to see, like, been around for 36 years. I've seen a couple of elections, or I've been around 60 years. I've seen quite a few elections, and none of them have taken 3 weeks to count the votes, you know?
Yeah, you
This
see
state,
that in third world countries.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Stop the vote and then
the
change
funny
it.
thing is here in Germany, I guess the polling stations, they close at 1800.
Mhm.
2000 we have the result.
Right, right, right. And that's the case with states that run it well here. That was the case with like Florida. That was the case with Ohio. The
Mm-hmm.
big states with a lot of people. That was the case with tons of states, you know? But the key
Mm-hmm.
ones, those are
Yeah,
the ones that had the problems.
yeah. I was thinking, how did we end up here? Um, you know, this submission,
Yeah.
this corona nonsense. And here's just one thought that crossed my mind. I'm not claiming that it's true, but we had a long time this neoliberalism. And what that brings along is, you know, nothing is really stable anymore. You know, your job is no longer stable. You have a contract for 2 years and then we will see, or maybe the company moves to a different state. And yeah, if you don't move with us, then you are out. And even your marriages, your relationships, your partner can dump you at any given moment, and there might be a better model on the market.
Totally. Yeah.
And
Yep.
so it has this flavor of being in competition all the time with everybody out there. And whether we like it or not, on an emotional level, that is very, very exhausting. And what crossed my mind was, is it that why people have this feeling, oh, finally somebody is telling me what to do and then I'm safe? You know what I mean?
I
This.
do. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that I hadn't thought about how neoliberalism in particular would have played into that, the exhausting effects of competing socially and like financially, economically speaking. But I think that you're probably onto something there, and it comes, I would say, in along with a lot of other things. You know, the way that I often view it, or the download that I get, or the observations that I make, or the constant generation after generation, people moving further away from just a sense of empowerment through personal responsibility, and not and a society that tells us more and more, a political system that tells us, a social engineering system that tells us, systems that tell us, an educational system that tells us, fashion statements that tell us that personal responsibility is actually a disempowering thing. It's an oppressive thing, and dependency on, you know, on the government specifically, is an empowering thing. You know, when you see somebody like Bernie Sanders and the popularity that he has among my generation, Bernie Sanders, he takes the idea of rights and he takes them from where they originally were, let's say from an enlightenment perspective or a religious perspective, as my rights are a God-given barrier that cannot be infringed upon for me to create my own potential based on my relationship with God and how I want to create relationships with others and what I want to do with myself. My rights essentially are my responsibilities to create my life as I see fit, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else. That's kind of how the Bill of Rights sees it. And Sanders flips that and says, no, you're not free and you don't have any rights unless the government's providing you health care. You're not free and you don't have any rights unless the government's making sure you have housing. You're not free and you don't have any rights unless you're getting guaranteed this kind of thing. And people go crazy for it. I mean, tons of people in my generation go crazy for it because they've really been divorced. They've divorced themselves from this understanding that their own empowerment is is inextricably entwined with the degree to which they want to actualize themselves with through their own path. And that's how I often see this trend is we've moved so far away, and each generation moves further and further away from the idea of from wanting to be empowered and wanting to be free, because being free is a risky thing. It's a scary thing. It's an uncertain thing. If you're truly free, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and whatever the outcome is, you have to take responsibility for it. And I think that that's a hard place to live, and we have, it's a hard place to live, and we have such a behemoth institution that can physically offer support through whatever it is, you know, welfare or directives like coronavirus directives, that it's almost irresistible to just let that settle in. It takes an immense amount of resistance to say, no, I don't want that to be part of my life. I don't want these institutions of power and authority to be part of my life. You know, rather than years, you know, centuries and centuries ago, those institutions weren't as powerful. There was no hope that the government could provide you with anything. So why would somebody, so obviously family systems and individuals were going to have to build grit to live their lives and to provide for themselves and to develop a life that was going to be purposeful and to feed them, because there was no other option. And now that there's such another option, and even a mandate, it's just so seductive. I think it would be as seductive, maybe not as seductive, but that's how I break it down to is, I think it's exhausting to live in a place of personal responsibility, but at the same time, it's very life-giving. The neoliberal piece, I think, is more just strictly exhausting rather than life-giving. Like what you pointed to doesn't have the same, it doesn't really offer the same amount of spiritual food that living from a place of responsibility and empowerment through responsibility does. So yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I think it's the breakdown of the family systems. I think it's breakdown of social relationships. I think it's breakdown of religion. I think it's breakdown, again, of rites of passage and initiation and building of resilience and grit. And that people are hungry to be told what to do and to have somebody else just take care of it. And then from a flip side, if you want to look at it from the perspective of the politicians, when you live in a world like this where everybody's looking to pass the buck and blame somebody, if you're in a place of power and you can do something, you don't want the media or people coming out to you and saying, oh, you didn't do anything, it's your fault. So it almost, if you're a politician, if you're a governor, and you take the step of saying, we're not going to have a mandate, we're not going to have a lockdown, we're going to trust you to follow your own path and to take care of yourselves, you know, with
which would be the smart thing to do.
That would, and many people do it, but it takes an immense amount of courage, because the response in today's culture is, you didn't do anything. So if somebody dies or somebody gets hurt or there's a catastrophe here or there, you say, you didn't do anything, you should have done something. So then you get these politicians coming up over the top and making authoritarian dictates, not because they have any evidence that it's going to help. It doesn't matter to them whether the masks help. It doesn't matter to them whether the lockdown helps. They feel cornered, and so they want to be able to say, at least I did something, and I'll get these people off my back from questioning me that I did something or that I didn't do anything. It doesn't even matter if it helps or not, you know?
Yeah, I see that as well. And also what I see is a lot of incompetence, meaning there was a hearing in Switzerland with normal people, politicians, and it was about these measures. And then one of the politicians said, yeah, well, we have to believe somebody. and then somebody else said, why do you even have to believe?
Exactly.
You can learn how to read a scientific study. You can learn that. If you are making decisions that are affecting anybody in your country, destroying livelihoods and what have you, I expect from you that you know and that you stop believing.
Yes.
We didn't vote you in so that you listen and believe somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think belief is useful if you're going to allow freedom. Like, I believe you have the inalienable rights to determine your own life. I believe that you have a sense of self-preservation, and that I'm going to rely on that and trust that. So it's like, I think belief is fine for politicians to have if it elicits them giving space and freedom. But again, like you said, if they're going to take action, or prohibitive or constricting action, then that absolutely needs to be based in knowledge. Yeah. Otherwise it's evil, honestly.
Do you know who Mr. Steve Piccinnik is?
No.
Okay. I always call him the backroom dealer. He used to be a psychiatrist. He also worked in governmental positions. Can look him. Sorry, you can look him up on Wikipedia. So, when Trump came in 2016, he was a guest on the Owen Schroyer show. Owen Schroyer is somebody that is working for InfoWars.
Yep.
And I only noticed that because somebody else pointed that out, because I'm not really an Alex Jones fan. And but he is retiring next year.
Alex Jones is?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, he said he's going to retire next year.
Wow.
And maybe Owen is taking over. What do I know? We will see.
Yeah.
Maybe Alex changes his mind again.
Yeah.
Until next year. So he had Steve Piccinnik on his show, The War Room, and then his opening words, Owen's opening words were, I can really feel the storm coming. That was always this cue thing. Yeah, the storm is coming. The storm is coming.
Yep.
And Kavanaugh will arrest all the, none of that ever happened. Okay, well, Steve Piccinnik then said, well, it's nice that you feel the storm coming, Owen, but actually the storm is over. We, the military, and certain factions in the intelligence services brought Trump in. And everybody woke up the next morning and didn't really understand how that happened. We exchanged the voting machines that were fraudulent and that flipped the candidates. We exchanged them the night before. And who is to say that they didn't exchange them the other way around?
Right.
You know?
Right. Totally.
You know? Okay. And I thought, really? We, the military and certain factions in the intelligence services, we brought Trump in. That sounds like a soft military coup. Yeah. So
that's what Owen said?
What?
Is that what Owen said, or what you're saying?
No. That is what I thought.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Owen was head over heels over that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought when this happened, the Banana Republic style election, I thought, I went to Steve Piccinnik's channel, but he hasn't said anything. But I found him on Owen Schroyer show again.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, according to him, this is a sting operation.
I've heard this.
You heard that with that UFS blockchain encryption?
I've heard it. Yeah. I've heard it. I've heard it. I would be highly
that they know where every ballot is, and that they know who has it, and yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, but that does not solve the problem with the voting machines.
Correct.
Or am I mistaken?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. But I think that I mean, at least with some of the voting machines, they've been able to identify when they did that flip.
Yeah. The only thing I would say to this is we will see, because he
Yeah.
also talked about that in certain states, the National Guard has been brought in, and that there will be arrests of people who, yeah,
Who what?
who, who were in on it,
Okay, gotcha.
to put the votes away that actually were for Trump, that everybody knew it, and that they turned it into a sting operation.
I would hope so. It's a very beautiful, beautiful, hopeful story. That would be great. You know,
But that all of that is good and fine, but does that really change anything for next time?
for the next election,
Mm-hmm.
only if people are actually getting arrested, I would imagine that would change things
Mm-hmm.
if that actually happened.
Yeah.
The frustrating thing is that how would we determine that again, with the media like we have it? The biggest news, the whole Burisma thing, the whole CCP, investment in Hunter Biden, they didn't even report on it. Like big news is just avoided. So even if something like that happened, I don't know how we would be able to determine that it was corroborated. Court records, I don't know. I really don't know.
Sometimes I take my bird's eye view when I have enough of the madness, and then I look at it, and then I remind myself that this is a matrix, and then I take this bird's eye view and I look at this mess, and it's almost, as if it feels as if the matrix is telling you, my goodness, what else has to happen to finally yank you into reality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about where I'm at too. I really focus more on, there's always political, there's always those elements to what I talk about, let's say on my channel, or what I think about. But a lot of what really plagues me and what I really ruminate about is just is kind of the human soul and the human psyche and the human experience, and what common experiences or what patterns among individuals lead to these outcomes. Take all the conspiracy stuff aside, put all of the manipulation aside, put all of that stuff aside. What brings people to the place where they consent to this kind of stuff? What brings people to the place where they demand this kind of stuff? What brings somebody to the place where they can have their business shut down by an authoritarian government and then turn around and vote for that government? Those are the things that plague me and get me thinking, like, what's happening on an anatomical, psychic, spiritual level with individuals among the human race that leads them down this path or gets them to even create this path for themselves? Because those things, like those thought streams, I think are very easily, like they make sense, and they're things that everybody can observe and kind of attest to, or be like, yeah, I see that too, or I can understand that. And so those are the kind of conversations that I try to facilitate among people when I'm having this type of conversation, because as soon as I go to a place of, like, talking about, I can't remember his last name, but the operative that you just spoke about on the Owen Schroyer show, if I start talking about that, I mean, I lose people. They don't even want to go there. They can't talk about that. But if I'm talking in terms of personal empowerment, purpose, responsibility, freedom, the love between a parent and the child, and things that make sense to people on a heart soul level, then they can get with that, and maybe develop more of a healthy suspicion toward how things are going just from a human level, without even having those facts, without even having the facts of political or social manipulation. Just by getting clearer about what they're capable of, and what it feels like, remembering what it feels like to be better aligned as an individual, and getting identifying what it is in their life that brings them purpose. Those are the conversations that I like to have, because that shakes people loose of it too. I mean, if you have a conversation, most people agree, I get purpose from what I create. I get purpose for what I'm responsible for. I get purpose through what I'm able to contribute and how I'm able to help people. And when I'm shut up in my house and everything's given to me by an all-powerful Leviathan government and given to everybody else, wow, that really does rob me of all of my purpose. Not just in my own work, but I'm prohibited from giving anything to anybody or helping in any way. I can't even go volunteer at the local whatever, because they're not going to let me near anybody to help them out. And when people can kind of like see things from that perspective, I think the level of sickness becomes apparent to them, even without understanding or having any suspicion about high forms of insane manipulation. I will say I've been taken for a bit of a loop, a spiritual loop the last week. I watched your Gary Wayne interview, and that's been a huge it's not that kind of content was totally foreign to me, but he's amazing. I mean, the level of research and dedication that he's put into it, I'm going to order his book and read it, but taking the perspective of like eschatology, of like end times perspective versus like continuum of cycles, really changes it changes everything, and that made a huge impact on me. It really did. So it's kind of scrambled my my orientation a little bit.
I see that differently. We are at the end of a cosmic cycle, yes, and every time that happens, everything is upside down. Yeah. So and when I talk to other people who are well read about these cosmic cycles and energies that are going, and I found it so interesting. I had Maxine Taylor on a year before the US election this year, and she said, because of the energies, planetary energies that are coming in, she said a couple of wonderful things, that in May all hell will break loose, and that the election will be highly contested. So we have that on record.
Right. Yeah.
That she said it a year before it happened.
Yep.
And so yeah, and according to those people, we will be on a roller coaster until 2027.
Interesting.
And one of the last stable areas in the USA will be Texas.
That's good news.
And if you look at Elon Musk is moving to Texas, and other huge companies are moving to Texas. So they might know something that the others don't.
They probably do. Yeah. My thought is that they were just looking for lower taxes or no taxes. But it very well could be something beyond that. So this was an astrologer you're speaking of?
And Maxine Taylor is a astrologer, and I also talked about this subject with Masaki Miyagawa.
Okay.
And I have a couple of interviews with him, and I have to say I love them. When Masaki is on, that's always, I mean, I'm always excited about my guests, no question about that. But with Masaki, there is a lot of, resonating energy between the two of us. So, and when he rolled it out, and I also had David Matheson, who explained a lot of the cosmic things and myth. Yeah, so I see it in that way. I definitely do not believe in a hell, the lake of fire. That is not even justice to me, because letting somebody burn forever and ever and ever and ever that has sinned for 70 years, that to me is psychotic. That's over the top.
Yeah.
That has the taste of revenge. Yeah, and revenge really, I don't know, to the max. And that is not how I see a creator. Plus, if I give you free will, why am I bitching afterwards that you are not doing what I told you to do? Either I give you free will, then it's none of my business. Or I tell you from the get-go, you have to follow everything I say or else. Yeah, and here is no free will.
You don't think there is free will?
No, I think we do have that, but I have a problem with a creator that first he gives you free will and then he's bitching about it if you make a different choice and punishes you for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
I know that millions and millions of people believe that, and that's okay with me.
There's the mystical path. I was interested in the distinction that Gary tends to make between the mystics and then the literalists, right? And so I've always been more of a mystic. And when I have read scriptures of many traditions, but Judeo-Christian scriptures, when I have read the hell and the heaven, it's been more of a state of being that you're cultivating, and then the laws that are given, or the ways of being, and the stories being allegories, obviously, but the laws that are given being paths that lead toward heavenly type situation, in this life, in the edification of the soul, so that the soul is stronger and more capable and more full upon death. And so that's like the allegorical way to read it, that these laws or these dictates or these cosmic divine laws, if you follow them, if you choose to follow them, you will be building life and power and empowerment in yourself and in those around you. And if you choose to rebel from them, you will be creating discord, chaos, and hellishness in the world around you, and weakening your soul for the time that you die. And that's often the kind of framework that I've worked with. And whether or not it's right or wrong, I don't know. Hopefully we'll know someday. But the literalist thing really just throws that all to the curb, and just like, it's just, I mean, it's cataclysmic. It's a cataclysmic shift to take that perspective. It's very interesting. Very interesting. I think they can both be held to some extent, but
Yeah, I'm convinced that some of the real power players behind the curtain that you will never see in any newspaper, and these are not the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, that's laughable.
Yeah.
Those people you will never hear from in the media. But I'm convinced that they are using this as a blueprint.
Using what as a blueprint?
The special Bible prophecies, they use that as a blueprint and try to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. that is what I see. And yeah, but I do not believe in a creator that puts anybody into hell forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. No.
It's so mystifying. All of
Yeah,
it's so mystifying. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that is a made-up construct, the idea of hell. It's to subjugate you, to scare the shit out of you, that you fall in line. It was especially useful for the church, you know, during, yeah, let's say the Middle Ages.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And they derived a lot of power from that and money because
Absolutely.
they sold these papers that
Yeah.
you could show after death,
Shorten your time.
that
Yeah.
you do
Shorten your
not
time
end
in
up
purgatory.
in hell and stuff like that. Yeah. So no.
Yeah. It's like your health permit. It's
Yeah.
like,
Your metaphysical effort.
totally the same thing. Yeah. I mean, it's projecting the moral authority onto this temporal thing, and then purchasing your way along through life, like taxes or whatever. Yeah, I think a lot of people these days have a similar relationship to the government that Catholics had to the Inquisition in the church in the 14th and 15th centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we have not evolved very much. You know, people are perfectly okay yelling at each other, and that it doesn't seem to bother anyone that now the advice is jail all the corona protesters. And yeah, so where's the evolution?
That's a personal thing. I don't know that I don't know that we should expect any kind of collective evolution. I really don't. And I think that largely we've probably seen more than a collective evolution. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. A lot of people would say I'm wrong. More New Agers would say I'm wrong, or maybe your astrologer friend as well. There's the idea that there's forces outside of our control, say collective cycles, astrological cycles, that we naturally evolve through, whether that's to something higher or not. That's up to interpretation, I guess. But I would say that we've devolved spiritually. I mean, I think that we've regressed in a lot of ways, collectively speaking, around the world, as technology and centralized governmental power has grown. I think that, again, because the onus for personal development has been taken and placed outside of ourselves, onto, on the one hand, technology, and onto the other hand, government authority, we aren't cultivating spiritual, soul, psychological, personal development to a degree that we once did on an individual basis. So I think that there's a lot of collective degrading and devolution, rather than evolution. And it doesn't have to be that way, but I think it's always been a personal and individual mandate as to whether there's going to be a evolution over the course of one's life, or not. But I do think that there's ageless wisdom and codes of conduct and maps towards self-actualization that show up around the world in different spiritual systems and teachings that have been abandoned, that we've abandoned, that lead to self-actualization, that lead to resilience, that lead to capability, that lead to knowledge, that lead to compassion, that lead to perseverance and courage, and kind of the classic virtues, and we don't really care as much about those anymore. It's in a technocratic society. It's not about virtue. It's about strictly about brawn and capability. It's about power, like collective power, like just power for power's sake, not for the sake of anything else. I told you about a mentoring program that I used to run, and I've been working on developing another one, and for boys, that hopefully we'll get the chance to deliver at some point, if the world doesn't crumble and fall apart. But we wanted to give them a framework to talk about power and to think about power, and not to sully it or give them the impression that it was a bad thing, like being powerful is bad, or you should shy away from it, or being an empowered man or young man is a bad thing. But the context that we set up for them is that virtue comes first. So here's the virtues. Here's the virtues that you need to cultivate. Responsibility, courage, discipline, self-knowledge, compassion. We've got maybe 10 of them set out for them. And being powerful is fine, and developing power and influence is totally fine, but it can't be for power's sake. No. Otherwise, you're going to become a tyrant and you're going to cause destruction. It has to be in service of virtue. You have to put those higher. You have to set those as the bar, and be constantly, renewing yourself toward those ends. And if you become more powerful as that happens, great, fine. But again, the power must be subservient to the virtue. And that's how we set it up for them. And I think that in today's systems, it's more power for power, power for power's sake. And people virtue signal, but it's not to be virtuous, it's to gain more power and influence. They just say things that they think might be conceived of as virtuous, or they do things that they think might be conceived of as virtuous. But it's to gain influence rather than to actually cultivate oneself, and one's personal path. So I don't know. I don't know if I would expect evolution. A lot of people that I've surrounded myself with over the past, many years, a lot of my community here, I live in kind of a new age Mecca sort of a town, USA, one of the places that everybody gravitates to, and everybody says it's so charming and all of these things. And I just fell in love with the place, and it's got such powerful energy. And a lot of the people who find themselves here tend to fall into that belief system that we are evolving collectively, or that there's some unified point that we're working toward, or I don't know. I guess I've taught myself not to see it that way. But it could be that we are. I'm not sure. Do you think we are?
No, yeah. Sorry. And there is no mass awakening either.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
I don't see that.
I would say we are worse off than 10 years ago. In general, overall. Basis. I'm not saying that there are pockets of people, yanking out of their illusion. I know that is happening. When I will speak of a mass awakening, when I see people exiting the cult of order followers, meaning police and military, by the thousands, then and only then I will speak of a mass awakening.
Interesting. So when you see people resigning their posts of police and military, basically. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because these are the enforcers of the madness.
They are. Yep.
And that is my how can I put that? I measure it that way, and as long as I do not see that, I will not speak of a mass awakening.
Yeah.
Not very popular to say that. But yeah, and I know we are in for a marathon. This corona madness will not go away just like that.
No.
If we want to have little tidbits of freedom back, we have to stand up.
Again, you're right. I mean, we're at that threshold right now. Like you said, the time is now. If you're not going to follow, the time to not follow is now. If you truly believed back in April that it was going to be a 15-day thing and you could help flatten the curve or whatever, so you were just going to go along with it, okay, I'll throw you that bone. But it's like now you've got enough time to see that that's obviously not the case, and this is kind of an intended permanent solution. And it's before the time where people are used to it. So it's like the time's kind of now, because a year down the road, people will kind of be starting to acquiesce and be used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the time for disobedience were ever upon us, then I agree. Now is the time.
Yeah. Exactly. And that opportunity will not come along for quite a while. I'm not saying it will be, forever. I think the human spirit at one point will break free one way or another, but it might very well be for coming generations that this is really hell.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, safety is nothing compared to freedom.
Yeah.
Safety is so small. It's
Yeah.
such a small thing to strive for in comparison to freedom, human freedom, freedom of your soul and your mind. To place that consistently before freedom in the way that we do collectively now, and that is in fashion to do, is so it's just undignified. It's just so unsophisticated. Because if one obviously constantly places safety in front of freedom, then it is the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is literally only leads to a padded cell. It leads to a padded cell with the feeding tube. That's where that type of thinking leads. It can't lead anywhere else. At some point or the other, you have to say, okay, danger is okay.
Yeah.
Danger and death are okay. We accept them. We're not going to, you don't need to aggressively bring them about, but they're part of being in a human body and they're okay and you accept them. Otherwise, it's a padded cell with a feeding tube.
Yeah.
And that's where we're rapidly going to. I hate to say it. It's scary.
Yeah.
But that's the only way this type of thinking plays out.
And this technocratic dystopia that they're trying to erect, I have my suspicion that it has deep psychological roots, that these people, these self-appointed elites, have a very neurotic relationship with aging, getting sick, and dying. These three topics have never been resolved in themselves. And that is why they think they have to push, or the right to push, anybody else into that nonsense.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that is what's on a psychological level, what is going on there. I can only feel safe if anybody else has the same opinion that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And does the same thing that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's probably the case, especially on the kind of plebeian level, you know, among the just the everyday sycophants to this. Yeah. Like the woman who accosts me in the store for not wearing a mask. I think that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
With her, you know.
And I know we talked about this briefly last time when we talked, you know, the situation in Germany, when I said everybody is going along with that bullshit. Look where we are now. You know, yeah, jail the corona protesters, jail the ones who do not want to have a vaccine. People are getting their bank accounts taken away. They are losing their jobs for speaking out. Yeah. Then with others, there is discussion, can we take their pension away? Yeah. So guys, we are already there. It is like 1934 again. Yeah. So what are you waiting for? When are we going to stand up?
Who are the people that are getting the bank account suspended? They're the leaders of this.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So high profile people who are taking an activist approach at this point.
Yes.
It's not yet at the point of just it being your opinion. It's if you're making it, if you're being an activist about it.
Yeah, but these are the first steps. You know how that.
Oh, sure, I know. Yeah, yeah, of course. Quickly it will go there.
Yeah. And now we are hearing that in the UK, they are talking about that people who have been tested will get an arm. Yeah, you know, like this Jewish star, the yellow thing. People that have been tested get a white, what do you call it? that you put around your sleeve.
An armband.
Armband. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, then you are allowed to shop in a supermarket. Otherwise, no. If you have not been tested and you do not have a white armband. So, I mean, really, at this point, who is not seeing in which direction this is going, I have to say you're an idiot. I will say it very blatantly.
If they don't see it, I'd agree with you, but I think most people do, and that the operative word is more coward.
Yeah.
I think that it's more. I think it takes an immense amount of courage to stand in the. I'll speak from experience. I don't know if you have this experience, but I don't know if it's easy for you. But for me to go into a store without a mask, not knowing if someone's going to corner me, not knowing if 3 people are going to say something and start speaking loudly and start saying, "Where's your mask? The governor said so. Where's your..." There's fear there. And when it happens, and it has happened on a couple of occasions to me, it's a very paralyzing situation. Just to be cornered and isolated socially and ostracized like that socially has a biologically paralyzing effect that most people are not willing to confront and deal with. And to be a civilly disobedient in this situation means you have to be willing to confront that anytime you
know
go
what
out.
you can do? This is something that here the folks in Germany are doing. They are connecting via the internet, and it's called free shopping. And
Free
they
shopping.
meet with 5 and 10 people and go without masks. Because funny enough, if you show up with a group of people without masks, nobody says a thing.
They don't confront you and try to humiliate you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've thought about that. We've got some Patriot groups here that we've been going to and meeting some great people. And that's an option that's been organized, you know. So that's definitely worthy. But again, going back to why people participate in this, a lot of the times it's ignorance, like you said. It truly is. But with a larger contingent, I think it's cowardice. I think it's fear.
Yeah. But a lot really buy into the narrative.
A lot do.
Yeah, I see that.
The technocrats do. The people who have aligned themselves with technocratic sensibilities of like, I do what's right by the CDC. Who buy into the idea that the government can determine what it means to be a good citizen or to be morally upright in your relation to others. Yeah. You know, they do buy into it. Obedient people.
Interesting times.
Yeah.
The wonderful Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
Totally. Yeah. The great Chinese curse. Well, I mean, it's refreshing to talk to you, and I appreciate the stand that you're taking in this time. I mean, it means so much. I mean, to connect people who are seeing through this and to make this information accessible to folks is really powerful. And just to walk in the world as a free person is a huge thing this day and age. And you know, there's that phrase, if the light shines in the darkness and the darkness does not overcome the light. And I think that there's truth to that as long as there's somebody who's speaking up, as long as there's somebody who's walking around not wearing a mask, as long as there's like one, then the game is not over yet, you know. And there's a flame that's contagious. There's a flame of knowledge and someone to look to for an example, to keep humanity, you know, and freedom alive. So it's.
I thought that as well. And you know what else? I think this entire thing has the character of a ritual as well. And now they are coming up with, not here where I live, but downtown, you have to wear the mask as well. I hardly ever go there, but not because of the mask thing, just because I don't like to go there. I haven't done that for many years.
Right. Same here.
I go there very, 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 very seldom that I do that. But if I do not wear the mask. And there are other people that don't. But I have a strong feeling they cannot get the numbers together for their ritual. You know, a ritual has to have a certain amount of energy to work. And for that, I guess they need almost 100% of the people, you know, going along with that, because it's also energy harvesting. If you are compliant, if you
Sure.
subject to that. And that is why I think they are going so crazy now. They somehow cannot get the numbers together. They cannot fetch, scoop up enough energy. That is what I'm thinking from a ritualistic point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the mandate's what turned me against it.
Mm.
Honestly, before I knew it, before I had any like research about or even thought about it, like when it was a suggestion, when it was a suggestion by the governor to like wear a mask, I wore one sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he came up over the top and said you have to, I said, okay, well now I can't. Now you've limited my ability to do this because I'd be participating in tyranny. You should have just had it be a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
You get people like me to comply. But I'm not a very good representative statistic because the mandate did accomplish more numbers. That was observable.
Mm.
But it made it a moral thing for me. It made it like an ethical issue then.
Mm.
It was like, okay, give me some information, some disease transmission information, and say, you know, you can do this, that, or the other, and leave it to me and my autonomy to determine. And maybe I'll do it.
Mm.
But if you tell me to cover my face, so you're going to write me a ticket and arrest me, and then you're saying that that's the same thing you're going to do to a mother in the park with her kid, then by participating, I'm signing off on the dotted line that I think that that's okay for you to do to anybody, not just me. And so then it's a moral obligation to not do it because you become a tyrant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 3D cha-cha.
Yeah.
Ouagadougou. It's yeah, it's amazing. On one level, sometimes I really have to laugh, and I'm happy that I'm wired that way. It sometimes takes the edge off, because if you really dig into all the madness that is going there, can really be disheartening.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we'll keep at it. I mean, yeah, I'm going to work on that more too. I think having that bird's eye view and that laughter and that meditation is important. And, you know, you need to protect your own constitution and your own soul.
Mm.
You know, there's this like allegory. It was in an old children's book that I read when I was a kid. It was called Uncle Wiggily. It's this old like American South children's book. And there was this story called The Tar Baby. And the tar baby was like some sort of an animal that got covered in tar, and it was antagonistic, and somebody in the village got in a fight with it and was just totally consumed by being in this kind of like conflict with this tar baby. And every time he hit it, his hand would get stuck on it, right?
Mm.
And he was more and more enslaved by the conflict the more dedicated to fighting that he was, when he could have just walked away. You know, and obviously that's not a very good example for what we're dealing with. You can't really walk away from this. But there's some level of I think it is important, you know, to maintain that spiritual domain of yourself through laughing and having that bird's eye view. It's important.
That's one of my favorite Bible verses, when it says, "A happy heart brings healing." I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact word. And a sad spirit will dry up the bones.
Yeah.
So that they start breaking. So yeah, there is deep truth in that. And I know it's not always easy, but you know, a happy person, especially those days, if you're walking around outside, you do have an impact on others.
Yes.
They can feel the difference, even if they do not talk to you, even if they they will feel that, and you do have an impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a different energy. You know, it's not the energy of panic and we are going to die.
Or defeat, right? Or defeat. You just, panic and defeat. Just,
yeah, which is true. One day we will.
roll over and die. Yes. Yes. Thank God.
Yeah, can you imagine
No.
being here forever and in this madhouse?
No, wouldn't want it.
No, 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 sorry. I have a ticket to the beach when I leave here.
Nice.
First class accommodation.
Awesome.
Okay, this was it, guys. Night flight for today. Thank you, Jordan, so much for coming. I had a great time talking to you again.
Thank you, Judith.
We will see you all next time. Stay safe from tyranny and stay sound out there. Bye-bye.